Are the Kansas City Chiefs still the king of the AFC West? And I think we have to take a look at where the Chiefs are at versus all the other moves that the teams in the AFC West have made. The Chiefs have been running roughshod on this entire division for the last 5 years, 6 years, ever since the emergence of Patrick Mahomes here, and even a little bit too with Alex Smith. He was even still leading them to some division wins. Even when Peyton Manning, I believe that there was that game, that final game that Peyton ever played against the Chiefs was at Denver when he had the record for, I think, the most passing yards in NFL history, and they got absolutely walloped by the Chiefs. And then Peyton got benched in that game for Brock Osweiler. I'll never forget that moment.
I forgot Peyton Manning got benched.
That was the start of the Chiefs starting to win the AFC West division here. But I think we have to ask ourselves this question too. Have they done anything to get better, Tommy? And I'm talking about the Chiefs. Look, they lost Tyrann Mathieu. They replaced him with Justin Reed, who, nothing against Justin Reed, he's not Tyrann Mathieu here. But it seems like they've tried to go a little bit cheaper or with some guys that aren't as talented as what Tyrann Mathieu was. And when talking about even culture building, I honestly don't think the Chiefs have made any moves yet to get better this offseason. They've kind of stayed a little stagnant. Now, I think the acquisition of draft capital is huge, but that is not guaranteed in terms of those picks turning out to be anything special. That's the crapshoot of the NFL draft.
Yeah, I mean, this whole segment is going to be nothing but receipts for people, because if we end up being wrong, we end up saying something about the Kansas City Chiefs, and they have a fantastic season, this is absolutely going to get thrown in our faces. I understand we're getting into right now. But no, it's the Chiefs. It's very much almost like the Dallas Cowboys. It's two teams to me that are right now where they're at in free agency. They are a lesser team than they were when they started. Now, granted, the Chiefs were so far ahead of pretty much everyone else where they could kind of come back down to earth a little bit and still be highly competitive. Like, no one is writing them out of this division whatsoever. Like, no one is saying they can't do X and or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, they are still going to be perfectly fine, but I still think they have made some moves to where, or their lack of moves have allowed them to kind of slip back towards the pack a little bit. And it also took a lot of other additions to some other teams that they play, multiple times a season. Losing Tre'Davious Ward, that is massive. Losing Tyrann Mathieu, which is something they chose to do. Like, I get Justin Reed might be good. Nothing against him at all. But Mathieu was also extremely good at what he does. And then you're talking about the trade of Tyreek Hill. It all depends at this point. What's their next move? How do they pivot and what do they do kind of losing some of these assets? But for me, the Chiefs, like I said, they are absolutely a worse team than they were when free agency started. Like I said, they've got room to move and they can still be one of the better teams. But there's still quite a bit of ways to go.
Outlaw 2440 says, I would never go back to this and make fun of you guys for being wrong. Hey, you know what? This you should if we are wrong. You should absolutely do that. Like, this is fun. Like, we need to share our thoughts and our opinions. And look, we could be right, we could be wrong. That's the beauty of it. That's why I love enjoying, the interaction with the audience, different fan base around the NFL. But, now let's take a look at the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, right now, I think earlier, DJ Dirty J said the Chargers, they have the same core. They just retooled at positions of need. Yeah. They've definitely gotten better. Look, you have Justin Herbert, who is an absolute piss missile, arm of a quarterback who is ridiculously talented and has such a bright future in the National Football League. You have Mike Williams, who you just brought back on a 3-year extension. You still have Keenan Allen. You just signed even Gerald Everett at the tight end position, which could be a little bit of a boost. I think that's an upgrade over Jared Cook. You still have Austin Eckler, who's a ridiculous guy, and obviously he has his own self in fantasy football. A great fantasy expert as well. So, like, when his playing career is done, he might join PFN as a fantasy expert. I'm sure
he'll take my job from day one.
Well, let's have him
more
than
welcome. Good job.
He could join us. We'd love that though too. But then I think a lot of the concerns here for this Chargers team were their defense underperformed to, I think, the standard that we had all thought, considering Brandon Staley's coming over from the LA Rams, #1 defense. He's had this meteoric rise as a coach. Now he's the head coach. Okay, you have this talented defense on paper. They're going to be legit. They're going to be scary, especially with a healthy Derwin James. And they were awful against the run last season. Historically bad there. So, you know what they do to kind of address that? They obviously trade for Khalil Mack, who's one of the better edge rushing pass rushers in the game, but also a good edge run defender in the game as well. And you have Joey Bosa opposite right there. Those two guys should hold their own against the edge when it comes to the run game and also getting pressure after the quarterback. But they really did struggle in the interior. Jerry Tillery was there, obviously, but they go out and they make a move to sign Sebastian Joseph Day, some familiarity with Staley, obviously with his time from the LA Rams. They, like I said, they're kind of reloaded there. And JC Jackson, they go out and they get him at cornerback. That's another area of need for them. However, there's the other cornerback spot, and there's the nickel that I feel like right now is a little bit of concern. They still have salary cap space to make some moves, but the Chargers defense, yes, they added Mack, they added Jackson, they added Joseph Day, but still, in my opinion, that they're not the best defense right now, in my opinion, on paper inside the AFC West. They're very good, and they have the potential to be very, very good, but Brandon Staley's going to have to do a lot more here. Keep it simple, RC says, I don't think Staley is capable of delivering a division. Should have made the playoffs last year, no excuses. Interesting enough, though, too, but it's like, for him, the consistency of going for it on fourth down at any point. I mean, there's so many points that they left on the field last season. It makes you want to go back, but look, if they get it, nobody's talking about it, right? If they don't get it, we're all talking about it right now in terms of the fact that they didn't do it. The Chargers are going to be very good. I think from the Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders, any one of these teams can win the AFC West this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, if the Raiders did, I think some people would be surprised, but I don't think we should, because honestly, the Raiders have been a tough out, especially whenever Rich Bisaccia took over for John Gruden. Like, the Raiders were actually a tough team you didn't want to play. But yeah, I think the Chargers have gone to absolutely take a step forward. Last year, they were 5th in EPA per play on offense, but they were 24th in EPA on defense. One spot ahead in the 23 was the Kansas City Chiefs. The difference is we've seen the Chargers kind of make these moves to get a lot better. Not to mention, they should get Asante Samuel Jr. back this year, who should at least kind of get over some of those concussion issues. I believe he had like 2 concussions over the span of like 3 weeks.
Yeah,
that's scary. Good. Like, I hate seeing that. This Pat Fryermuth ended up having a similar thing happen to him and kind of shut him down for quite some time last season. So hopefully, like, head injuries, like, you've only got so many tickets you can punch when it comes to head injuries before all of a sudden you just gotta call stop on that one. But yeah, I think the Chargers are absolutely going to be a better team. They really just addressed a lot of the needs they had. Not to mention that, like, last year when they pulled in and they get Slater in there to kind of protect that left tackle, like, he is an absolute mauler on the offensive tackle spot. Yeah. So I think this is a team that's just, they're so loaded. Also doesn't help either. They got the best jerseys in the NFL, so I think that probably counts for at least 3 points.
Okay.
But yeah, but the Chargers, they are absolutely going to be a fantastic team, so long as they do the things we're expecting. No, granted, we said the same thing last year about them. We also said the same thing last year about the Cleveland Browns, who upgraded their defense. We thought they were going to take this next step forward.
Yeah.
Look, Washington Commanders said the same thing about them. They had a top 5 defense last year. Then they added more secondary help. They had this offensive line with like Montez Sweat, and you had Chase over there too, where it's okay, they are going to be incredible. They fall back also. So like, we can sit here and kind of project what we think these teams are going to do, but until the whistle goes, like, we have no idea until week 1 happens.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here with the Chargers. But now I want to shift our transition now inside the division here. Our topic obviously being, are the Chiefs still the king of the AFC West? And it's so wide open right now. And this is the best division in football on paper. I think it's a national consensus here. The Las Vegas Raiders, they go out and they get Devontae Adams, who is a ridiculous acquisition for them inside that offense. You know, it'll be very interesting to see how Devontae Adams is used within a Josh McDaniels laden scheme. How is the transition going to be for Derek Carr? Derek Carr is a very, very smart quarterback. Super smart. I don't think he's going to have any issues picking it up, but we did talk about it too. And Mac Jones even said, like, hey, learning the Patriot way, learning this offense was very difficult. It's very complex. That's a tough thing to kind of overcome here, but Derek Carr is a smart guy. I mean, for a guy that had to learn the John Gruden offense, which is arguably one of the most complex offenses in the history of the NFL, I think he'll be okay here. Now, outside of that too, you talk about that, Devontae Adams, they add Bilal Nichols as a defensive end rotation guy for them as well. They get Chandler Jones, opposite of Max Crosby. Like, that's what it's going to be. You're going to have Max Crosby as a DN, outside guy, and you're going to have Chandler Jones there. You can move Bilal Nichols on the inside a little bit, play him in a 4-eye, which is inside shade of the tackle. You can play him in a 5 technique if you want. You can even play him in a 3 tech if you want to be able to do that, which is obviously the outside shoulder of the guard for those of you watching at home. They have a really good chance to improve there. Cornerback is still a little bit of a concern for them. I know safety, you have Jonathan Abram. They're trying to figure out who the other guy is going to be, who's going to step up there. They unfortunately struck out with Damon Arnett. We talk about the issues that they've had, all the distractions last year. You have Nate Hobbs in the slot, which I think was a pretty good addition for them. Trayvon Mullen, but they still need some more help. I mean, those guys right there aren't going to be good enough for them to try to make a big time run inside this AFC West division. However, if their offense puts up points the way that we think that they can, it's not going to matter because they have Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, Brian Edwards. I mean, they even added the Chiefs' DeMarcus Robinson to their rotation of wide receivers here. They have everything, and they've really upgraded the offense. And I think that was an area for them that they wanted a little bit more consistency in. The defense is going to be much better here. So I don't want to discount the Raiders here.
No, I don't think you can discount the Raiders. Honestly, look, the whole thing was like, apparently Devontae Adams' dream was to get back and play with Derek Carr again. Well, you pulled it off, and Derek Carr coming off a 4,800 yard year with all of the distractions that happened in Las Vegas between John Gruden, between Henry Ruggs, between Arnett and all that stuff. You didn't really have a consistent wide receiver core. Like, even at one point, look, they lost Darren Waller for a long time because of his IT band injury, where we thought it was going to be something much more significant. It was a very dirty play, honestly, anyway, where the guy just went low on him. But we always thought it was an ACL. But you did pretty much all of this by just throwing the ball short to Hunter Renfrow. Now you bring in someone like Devontae Adams, like arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. That chemistry, when that kicks off, that's going to be electric to watch, because honestly, they're paying enough. It better be also at the same time. You've got Josh Jacobs back there who can be, an absolute workhorse style running back. You can also rotate in Kenyon Drake, who they brought in 2 years ago, because they brought him in before the 2021 season on a 2-year deal. But honestly, it's still the Josh Jacobs show who can handle 250 plus touches without question. I think, like I said, safety is the interesting one, because Jonathan Abram, he just loves to run downfield. He tries to be his best version of Cam Chancellor almost, where he just wants to run and be physical inside the box. And sometimes, not only does he come up worse for wear, but he'll just lower his head and just kind of fire in. You see a lot of friendly fire with the Las Vegas Raiders. So they have him. Do you try to bring out someone like a Tyrann Mathieu? Look, he is one of the best guys when it comes just playing center field, using his intelligence and his range to try to pick balls off in the backfield. You bring him in there, and all of a sudden you pair him up with a Trayvon Merring, who kind of has that similar skill set where he could be another one of those center field, really rangy coverage style of safeties. He's still floating out there, so I could see him being a potential addition in here too. They got KJ Wright still on this team, so I think it's going to be a very interesting team when it comes to Las Vegas. They're going to be competing. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by them. I don't think you should have been if you saw the way this team was really coming together last year when they all kind of bought in due to the turmoil of this franchise. They've made some major moves when we were wondering when they were going to do it. They made those 2 splash plays with Chandler Jones and also Devontae Adams. I don't think they're done yet. Honestly, that's not a team I want to face this year.
It's going to be tough. And like I said, I think for any team in the AFC West, I think that having to cover that receiving core is probably going to be the most difficult. I think Denver's got some potential. They got talent, especially Russell Wilson elevating them. That's great. You have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, but I think overall the Raiders probably have the best overall receiving core inside the entire AFC West, from guys that are just big time production with Adams now, Waller, Bryan Edwards, his flash potential, and then Hunter Renfrow, who's just a ridiculous cheat code inside.
It's between them and Denver for me, I think, honestly.
It'll be tough. I'm excited to see maybe how it does shape out, but there is that there. And I'm glad you mentioned Trevon Moehrig as well at the safety position. I know they moved Divine Diablo down to the linebacker position last year. Yeah. I like him. I'm a big Divine Diablo fan here, and I am glad that we saw some utilization of him there, because I remember we were questioning in the NFL draft, and obviously, hats off to Mike Mayock and John Gruden on this one, but we're like, why did they take 5 safeties in the NFL draft last year?
He was just that hybrid style player.
And he'll be good. I think that Divine Diablo will be a pretty good linebacker for the Raiders organization. But now let's get to some of the storylines as well. We'll talk about the Denver Broncos here. The addition of Russell Wilson is huge for them. We've always kind of made the argument here on the show that, hey, they might be a quarterback away from being in the Super Bowl contention conversation. They get a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Russell Wilson. Then they go on the defensive side of the ball. They add Randy Gregory, who is an impact pass rusher, and he helps maximize everybody else on the defense. Oh, then they add arguably one of the better NFL interior run-stopping defenders in DJ Jones coming over from San Francisco. That right there is a really good addition for them. Oh, and then they go out and they add K'Wan Williams. Like, the Broncos are just kind of dipping out of the NFC West talent pool and bringing them over here. And there's familiarity, obviously, with a lot of these guys playing each other 2 times per season. So you have that. They have a returning wide receiver group of Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, who's very underrated, 12 touchdowns in the last 2 years combined for him. Only 1 drop in the last 4 seasons as well for Tim Patrick. That is ridiculous right there. Albert Okwuegbunam and then KJ Hamler coming off of an ACL injury. They've definitely upgraded
going to be
the
his first year.
Side of the ball. Yeah, that's the thing too. And then you add in Javonte Williams, who was arguably the best running back in the rookie class last season. So Denver's got the talent. They got the potential. And then they have Patrick Surtain, Justin Simmons, Ronald Darby. They have a lot of moves, and they could even add back Bryce Callahan.
I was going to say, do you think they're done making moves yet? Because I don't.
I don't think they are. I think they're going to make 1 or 2 more moves. Okay, they're looking at right tackle. They obviously were looking at Bobby Shell, who obviously came in, or Brandon Shell that came in and played with Russ the last 2 seasons, and the last 2 years combined has only allowed 6 sacks. So back-to-back, years of 3 sacks allowed. Minimal pressures, the least minimalized, I think, offensive tackle in the NFL in the last 2 years, that's great. The Broncos definitely need that, especially in terms of consistency there. But he came in, he had a visit, he passed his physical, everything went well, but the Broncos are still evaluating between him, former Bronco Billy Turner, former Packer Billy Turner too, who still trains in Denver, and then Dennis Kelly, who spent last season with the Green Bay Packers with Justin Allen and Nathaniel Hackett. So they're evaluating, I think, the options between them, Tom Compton coming over from San Francisco, and then Calvin Anderson there as well, who they really like as a developmental piece who could eventually be a starter this year or maybe next year for the organization. They have a lot here, but like the AFC West, I think the bigger question here, Tommy, is there are 2 new head coaches in the AFC West, okay? Actually, 3. There's 2. There's Brandon Staley, there's Andy Reid. I was thinking about the change from Bisaccia to everything. I was
It'll
like,
be Hackett and Josh
Hackett
McDaniels.
and Josh McDaniels are two brand new head coaches inside the AFC West. And for Hackett, he's a first-time head coach for him. Like, for him, he's got the offensive experience, but for him, this is his first time being a head coach. Josh McDaniels, this is his what? He had the Denver gig, the St. Louis Rams at one point. The Indianapolis Colts was supposed to happen. So this is realistically his third head coaching stint in the National Football League here with the Raiders. There's definitely a lot of intrigue and a lot of options based on first-year head coaches. I know Brandon Staley was that last year, so we'll see. And then keep it simple. RC says it's going to be fun. It's going to be weird for Wilson not having to run for his life, which is definitely different. I mean, that's definitely different here, I think, in Denver.
I'm excited. He's the most sacked quarterback since he came into the league. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I mean, was it between him or Baker? Because I know Baker Mayfield was getting sacked left and right. I think at a big Matthew. I'm not sure what the numbers were for Russ. I know like Baker had like a couple of years where he was sacked 40 plus times, if I'm not mistaken. His lowest was like 26.
Up there as well with his time in Houston. But that honestly, I think that year off last year when he didn't even play last year, I think that literally allowed Russell Wilson to really take off.
Well, we'll see how it goes. But I think the bigger question here to the audience: are the Chiefs still the king of the AFC West? Let us know in the comment section.